Modeling functions using rules, tables, and graphs. To start, use this function rule by plugging points into a table. And then we will take those points and create our graph. So the first thing we need to do is choose the input value for x and evaluate for y. So in order to do that, you're going to pick your points that you want to plug in for x, and then once you plug them in, you will get your y value. The table shows your x values that was plugged in. Wherever you saw an x, they plugged them in, and then it kicked out your y value. So 1/3 times -3 would give you a -1, plus 2 is going to give you a +1. So your values are -3, 1 is your first ordered pair. The next value that they plugged in was 0, so you take 1/3 times 0 plus 2. It's going to kick out to be 2, so your next order pair is 0, 2. Your third input was 3 for the value of x. Plug it in, and you will kick out +3 as well. So your third order pair is 3, 3. Once you have your order pairs, the next thing you need to do is step 2 here, plot the points as their ordered pair. So as you can see, I took -3, 1 over 3 up 1, plotted my point. Next one, 0, 2, plotted the point. Final point, 3, 3, plotted that point. The third and final step here, to model the function and by using tables values, would be to connect all the points to form a line. So over here is my 3 points, and I plugged them in, connected my points to create a line. This next example, here's our next example. Please read through the problem, and on your notes you can see that I've created your table to start with, and then after you've created your table and found your points, plot your points on the graph. Okay, so you should have been able to plot your points from your table. Your table should look something like this. Your points should be 0, 5, 1, 8, and 2, 11. When you take your ordered pairs here and plug them into your graph, you're going to get these points here, 0, 5, 1, 8, and 2, 11. Once you have your points, you can connect your dots. This should be your second example. Things to remember. These are some just FYI good things to remember when you are graphing functions. When you draw a graph for a real-world situation, use appropriate intervals and units. Second thing, make sure your intervals are equal. So your x's, you cannot, when you are looking at a graph, make sure that you have the same interval. Whether you're going by 2's, then every dash should represent a 2. If you're going by 5's, each dash would represent a 5. Just make sure your intervals are equal along your x's and your y's. Another thing that's important to remember is if you have all positive numbers, make sure you use only the first quadrant. Some vocab for today. Continuous data. Here's the definition, and discrete. Please take a moment, pause the video, and write your definitions down. Okay, so now that you got the definition down, let's take a look at explaining, looking at a discrete graph a little closer. So a discrete graph would be represented by points. So there's dots and the line is not connected. Where your continuous graph, it is a straight line, your dots are connected. So when you look at a discrete graph, there is times when you may connect them even though it is discrete. So an example could be if I had number of CDs, if my x was the number of CDs and the y would be like the cost to produce those CDs. If I was kicking out, like if I was burning CDs and it cost me $3 to burn a CD, and I want to know how much it would cost me overall. If I was going by ones here, so this would be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 continuous. You could label it as a discrete graph. However, if I was going each point as like 200, and then this point would be 400, 600, 800, continuing through, then this would be an example or a discrete graph where you'd want to use a straight line, because you'd have so many points. Because at between 0 and your 200 mark here, you would have 200 little dots. So it'd be easier to show it as a straight line. Here is an example where they give you your function rule, and you're going to take your points that you create from your table and make a dashed line. So, I've created a table here for you. You can take a moment and write these points down. I picked the points I wanted. I used 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the number of hot dogs, and then I inputted into my function and got my ordered pair. Once I have my ordered pair, you can see I plotted them, and I've used dots. And you can either leave them as dots or continue to, or use the dashed line. Either way works. So this is a discrete graph. Here are some examples. Please label discrete or continuous. So in this scenario, you are deciding whether it's discrete or continuous. If the graph would be discrete or continuous. This graph will be discrete, and it's because you either have 1, 2, 3, 4 continuous number of sheets. You can't have 1.5 sheets at a photo booth. It's either 1, 2, but there's not like a half in between, so that would make it discrete. Scenario B, decide if it's discrete or a continuous graph. Scenario B would be a continuous graph because you can weigh half of a pound, a fourth of a pound. Because it's not a specific data point, it would be continuous throughout, and you would draw that line. Scenario C would be discrete because, once again, you can't have 1.5 tickets to a baseball game. It's either 1, 2, 3 continuous. The next thing that we're working on today is graphing the function when you're given an equation. So our function here is y equals absolute value x plus 2. First thing you're going to do is create a table, and then you're just going to graph your ordered pairs. So please pause the video and create and finish the table. So now that you have graphed and continued the table, this is what it should look like. You should know your absolute value is going to make your V, and you take your ordered pairs here. -3, 5, going over -3, up 5. -1, 3, and continuously graph these points here. Our next problem is, this is your function, f of x equals x squared plus 2. You're going to create your table of values and then graph it. So when you create your table of values, you come up with these values that you want to plug in. So if I want 0 to be my x, I would have 0, my first column. I would plug in 0 squared plus 2. And then my ordered pair would be 0, 2. So continuously making your table and then graph. This is what you should have gotten: -2, 6, -1, 3, 0, 2, 1, 3, 2, 6. And when you go and graph them, this is what your graph will look like. go ahead and start working on your practice problems at this time.